Nelson Jordan. I'm Chris Nelson. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube page, please go ahead and do so right now. That way you can check out all of our previous content, get yourself all caught up with the great stuff we have out there. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as following our social media pages, and you can stay up to date with everything First and Final Word related with Nelson and myself. Today we are going to be discussing the Green Bay Packers defeating the Washington Commanders 27-18. Nelson, you have the first word.
Yeah, so this game was definitely game of the week for many folks. You have a former NFC Championship team that was in it last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. You also had Green Bay, which was highly coveted also going into the playoffs last year before they pulled off a dub with the Philadelphia Eagles. So you had a good barometer match, especially with two teams who may have dominated in some folks' eyes going in from week one into week two. So a good head-to-head matchup. This clearly was not what a lot of folks would have thought, which would have been an entertaining Thursday night football game. As a matter of fact, this is another win that LaFleur now has against Dan Quinn and company. He is now 4-0 against DQ. He has not scored less or just about average 30 points or more per game, which is absolutely insane. And if anybody wants to remember too, Matt LaFleur also was a QB assistant coach under DQ. So, and this is just the common theme. All the coaches who, are under the Shanahan scheme just find a way to beat him at his own game. We saw that from first quarter all the way to, the end of the game. The defense was just slow, lethargic. I get it. This could be an age variance big time from the youngest team to the oldest team. But the line of scrimmage was won by the Packers. So ultimately, that's how they won. Jordan Love made enough plays. He threw the ball downfield. Tucker Kraft had an amazing game. And the defense just had no answer at all, with the exception of a nice play that Amos might have had on that first drive where he was able to bat a PBU on a pass that Jordan Love was aiming for the end zone. So, besides that, I mean, it didn't seem like a contest at all by any means. What do you think?
Yeah, I concur. It wasn't necessarily a blowout, but when you look at the big picture, Green Bay dominated the game realistically. And I don't exactly think that was a surprise, but let's touch first on the unfortunate aspect of this game. The Packers went into the game without their starting left guard, starting right tackle, and of course they're down Christian Watson. They then lost Jaden Reed, who broke his collarbone on the opening drive. On the Washington side of things, Dietrich Wise Jr. went down, which what clearly appeared to be a season-ending injury was carted off. And Austin Eckler appeared to have, from what we saw and what some of the early reports were after the game, in all likelihood ruptured his Achilles. So really unfortunate across the board in the game to see three guys go down with significant injuries and already have some guys coming into the game with injuries. And then you look at the Packers, they're now down two starting offensive linemen and arguably their top two wide receivers, certainly in the conversation as such. I know they spread the ball around a lot. I would say Jaden Reed probably is their top wide receiver. And yet, they didn't miss a beat. You're absolutely right. They dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides. I mean, the Washington offensive line could not block that Green Bay front at all. And that's despite Micah Parsons playing limited snaps in the first half. It didn't matter who they had out there. I mean, they were just wreaking havoc. Washington didn't even seem to have in their game plan that they wanted to throw the ball down the field. It felt like a lot of dink and dunk was the goal. I understand that the pressure obviously forced that to be the case, but that was a big difference in the game was Green Bay was able to get explosive plays in the passing game, and Washington wasn't at all. The other interesting element was how bad the Commanders' secondary was. It was almost embarrassing. I mean, it almost looked like a college defense. The Green Bay wide receivers, period, tight ends as well. As you mentioned, Tucker Kraft had an outstanding game. Credit to him. But the receivers were running free in the secondary. I mean, wide open. Nowhere anywhere near them on a consistent basis throughout the game from beginning to end. Jordan Love didn't have a great game. He underthrew some balls deep down the middle, which were tough throws to make. The coverage was solid, if not good. But outside of that, he did have a really good game. He made the plays that were necessary to get it done. There were some other things you could critique with his performance, but all in all, he played well. I think it's fair to say he certainly outplayed Jaden Daniels on the whole. Obviously, two different teams, so there's different situations, different circumstances, but I mean, the Packers just looked like the far better team, and frankly, Washington needs to execute a lot better. I mean, even the secondary's tackling was poor. You had a play where Jordan Love trucked someone because he didn't bother to try to wrap up. I mean, come on, you're playing in the NFL. You know you need to wrap a guy up. You can't just hit him. You had another play, which I believe may have even been the same defensive back when he tried to tackle Tucker Craft high. How are you going to tackle Tucker Craft high at your size? I just didn't understand what they were doing in that regard. And to touch on one last thing, you mentioned that opening drive. If Green Bay doesn't have that false start, in all likelihood, they wind up with the touchdown in that drive based on how we saw things go the rest of the game. And Jordan Love did underthrow that ball, which good play by the defensive back in recovery, but he did underthrow that ball. But Washington had a false start later in the half that cost them a field goal at the end of the half, potentially, if not more. And there was some other false starts and poor penalties throughout the game. But all in all, it wouldn't have mattered. The Packers were clearly the better team on that night. Go ahead, Nelson. I can see you have something else.
Yeah, I got a number of things to say. I think this was ultimately just, another case of LaFleur just outcoaching his former mentor. I
That's fair.
mean,
Yeah.
this was a straight from if you're looking from a Commanders fan, now not for me, just from a bigger picture, right? Or NFL fan in general. The Commanders look like they got out efforted, out coached, and out willed, literally, right? As a famous player for the Washington Redskins once said, you're testing your manhood, right? In this case, that's clearly what it was on the offensive and defensive lines. I'll start off first with I think the game plan by both Cliff Kingsbury and Witt were very poor. I thought Matt LaFleur and his offensive game plan to expose the zone defensive game plan that Joe Witt had involved for such a dynamic offense was absolutely the right call that he had with so many crossing routes, so many zone beaters. Then you had literally their defensive coordinator. I'm sorry, I don't know the name, but they also had a very good game plan against Washington. Believe it or not, there's actually a stat. ESPN Insider actually on Twitter released a stat. Jaden Daniels, as of last year, threw the fewest touchdowns of any quarterback, or let alone he only had 4 touchdowns against what? Zone coverage, and they played 71% of snaps in zone coverage. It was the perfect game plan by the Green Bay Packers, and I'll be the first one to say, Jaden Daniels, you had one of your worst games against the Green Bay Packers on Thursday night. There were so many opportunities where instead of trying to throw for the deep ball, you either had Zach Ertz open down in the middle or you missed another receiver down in the middle that can move the chains. I don't know if it was the offensive line play. I get it. There's a lot of noise where Parsons is coming off the edge because he had a great game. I don't know if you saw Michael Parsons, but he had a great game. He was beating up on the rookie Connerly all game long. And credit to what you were saying, too. The injuries were piling up also for the Commanders. John Bates, one of their best tight end blockers, believe it or not, he got hurt. He
Neil
only
Brown
played
as
like 9
well.
snaps.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when you lose a John Bates and their type of offense, who they like to use as an H back, which Gibbs installed typically on when LT was playing for the Giants, so John Bates could chip, could be able to crash down and do all those things. So they were crippled, and they were already going down with those injuries. So it was just on all 3 phases from that standpoint. Out efforted, out coached, and out willed. And Green Bay, they looked by far the better team at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got anything else to say.
Yeah, Jeff Halfley is the Packers defense coordinator, just for whatever
Yeah.
it's worth. Yeah, and he's a
Okay.
great defense coordinator, former head coach at Boston College, where he did a good, far from great, but good job. So I just wanted to note that. And then in terms of what you said about Jaden Daniels and this being one of his worst performances, I mean, that tells you how good of a player he is, how good of a quarterback he is. The standard is that high because he did not have a bad game. Maybe you feel differently, but I don't think he had a bad game. He had a good game. He just had far from a great game. But there's nothing that
Fair
stuck out
enough.
glaringly about the game from Jaden Daniels. You mentioned a couple things that I'll be honest, I didn't pick up on. You were clearly looking at things I wasn't. I'll be honest, I was watching the ball when I watch a game. I watch the ball. But I didn't feel like there was anything glaring that stood out like, wow, what a horrible play by Jaden Daniels, or he really missed that one. Stuff like that. It felt like it was more the defense forcing him into those plays. But that doesn't negate the fact that he didn't exactly go out there and play the best that was available to him just as a quarterback in general. I mean, there were definitely opportunities there for him to perform a bit better. I mean, he couldn't even get going running at all. It was rough sledding for the
And I would
nature.
like to add, if I
Yeah,
could,
absolutely.
to what you were saying. I think since Jaden Daniels kind of was having one of his, I'll be honest to say it. I think he had one of his worst games. It almost surprisingly looked like the first game he had against Tampa Bay on his first year last year. You didn't see the aggressiveness coming from DQ and company. Because if he really was on a heater and he was, progressively moving the ball downfield and whatnot. Now, granted, the offensive line was getting beat up, then there would have been some aggressiveness. And the clear cut example of how they got out coached and how efforted. You recall this, you're watching the game. Do you not remember the last drive that the Washington Commanders had? I believe they had good field position to start number one. And they have about 2 minutes or so to take the ball and go score. And it's only 3 to, I think, 14 at this point. So at
So
this
just
point,
I don't mean to cut in, Nelson, but just for people watching, you said it was the last drive. So this was in the third quarter.
no, this is the first half. I'm sorry. First
Okay, so
half.
end of the first half, and yes,
Yes.
yes, they had good
Two
starting field
timeouts.
position. Yes, and not to mention, and I'm sorry, we'll come back to it in a moment. To skip ahead, they had the big kickoff return to start the second half, and had
Yeah.
another missed field goal off the right upright, rejected by the right upright, couldn't do
Yes.
anything. And the
Yes.
Commanders only managed, well, first of all, they had three field goal attempts through three quarters and missed the last two of them. So they were 1 for 3 in
Yes.
field goals, made the first. The two misses were long field goals, to be fair. They only had 3 points that one field goal through three quarters before the offense finally got going in the fourth quarter. I'm sorry, Nelson. You're talking about the end of the first half, that last drive. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like that was mismanaged by DQ. And I think DQ last year, we saw him as a coach. He would always push for the points, always push to be aggressive. And I feel like we did not see that aggressiveness come out of him. And I did feel that with what Jaden Daniels was facing under duress in the pocket, I feel that him and Cliff were a little conservative. And not to mention, too, you were talking about how finally, the Commanders were able to push the ball downfield in the third and in the fourth, too. Well, that touchdown was based upon a lot of motion was occurring. When they had somebody motion to the left, they were be able to take the zone defense and have them hover right. And all you have now is essentially, Ertz going over to the left-hand side, making a wheel route. He's wide open. They catch the ball. So a lot of that creativity, I feel like there was a lot of last adjustments too late. And personally, I think that Cliff and DQ are going to learn a lot about this and realize that number one, they cannot be too shy. They got to let the weapons go. They got to be able to just let them carry their team. There's a reason why that they were such a good team last year that made it to the NFC title game, and now this year you cannot take a step back if you're the Commanders and you're DQ because your expectations are higher. So, I mean, again, I'm not trying to down the Commanders. The Packers were definitely the better team. Their players made some outstanding plays, and Love had himself a game too, and so did Jacobs. By all means, that offensive
So
line,
if I may, I actually wanted to touch on that really quick. I was
go
going to
go
make it a
for it,
final
go
point
for it.
because we're kind of talking a lot about the Commanders, and the Packers won the game comfortably. So we should probably talk about how well they performed because it was outstanding.
That's what I
And we
was
have
getting
mentioned
to
it,
next.
but Josh Jacobs did not have a good game. Realistically, he didn't. I mean, he averaged under 4 yards a carry, well under, I believe. It was, and I know that's just a stat, but he didn't look bad. He's Josh Jacobs. He always plays well. But the Commanders' defense actually did a great job against the run, and that was clearly their game plan coming in is let's stop Josh Jacobs, which you understand. He's by far the best player on that offense. But the problem was the secondary then was so poor, and they never seemed to adjust to that. And credit to the Packers, they continued to give Josh Jacobs the ball. They didn't abandon the run. Now, to be fair, they ran a lot of plays because they were moving the ball so well and getting so much yards and
Yeah.
so many first downs. So they were able to do that. It's not like they didn't throw the ball a good amount. Granted, they threw the ball a lot less than Jaden Daniels did for the Commanders, but still they had great balance. So it was a good game plan, and it forced the Commanders to have to focus on stopping the run and Josh Jacobs in particular. And that is a big part of what allowed those receivers to be running free throughout the secondary, especially Tucker Kraft, as we mentioned. So I just wanted to touch on that really quickly before you
Yeah.
dive too deep into
So
it.
and I want to ask you a few questions actually, since you're so used to asking me a couple of questions on
Yeah.
curveballs. So Jordan Love, the stat line, he was 19 for 31. I think he had 244 yards. I think he had two or three TDs or two, excuse me.
Yeah.
So What do you think about Jordan Love? Do you think Jordan Love has somewhat steadily improved? Has he showed up until this point that he can be a quarterback that, can progress, sit in the pocket, make all the throws, even under duress? And I ask that because the Commanders, I think, were having a turning point. They just were having a turning point late. And again, the Packers just had too much of a lead, too much of a beat down on them that it was just too much. But when you saw the blitz pressures coming, Jordan Love was throwing out that back foot constantly. Is that a misfortune to their linemen being out, or is that Jordan Love just going back to the same Jordan Love that Packers fans and or NFL fans, by that matter, just they don't trust yet?
I think it's a combination of factors. I think it's interesting with the Packers at this point in time because Aaron Rodgers, of course, was a first round draft pick who spent his first 3 years backing up Brett Favre, who had been there forever. Jordan Love was a first round draft pick who spent his first 3 years backing up Aaron Rodgers, who had been there forever. All three of those quarterbacks had a tendency to throw off their back foot. They also had a tendency to throw with both feet off the ground. They've also all had incredible success doing both of those things. It's not that they're getting away with it. They're really good at it, and it works for them and allows them to elude pressure and make those plays.
Okay.
Now, what is so different about Jordan Love from Brett Favre, and also what was different about Aaron Rodgers from Brett Favre, and what is similar between the two, and that Jordan Love clearly learned from Aaron Rodgers to some extent, we've seen him have trouble with it the past 2 seasons, but in terms of what we saw in this game, and for the most part, in most of his games, he doesn't have problems with it. Just seem to be a lot of Jordan Love's games, he has a big problem with it, and then a lot of other games, he has no issue with it, and that's the interceptions. Aaron Rodgers at his best very rarely threw interceptions. He was as good as we ever saw at that, up there in the conversation with
I
guys like Tom
agree.
Brady. Yeah, especially in the modern era, which we see a lot less interceptions for the most part. Obviously, some quarterbacks are different with that, but Jordan Love was great about taking care of the ball. And a lot of times when it seemed like Matt LaFleur was almost trying to get too cute with the play calling and get these play action and bootlegs and stuff, which, to be fair, is what a Shanahan offense is built upon. I mean,
Yeah,
Mike
absolutely.
Shanahan coaching tree.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that so much from Mike Shanahan.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
each time that happened, you're right, the Commanders had pressure. So part of your question was, do I think that has to do with the offensive line? Yes, absolutely. No question about it. And they were getting quick pressure, and it's because of they had backups in there in large part. But he was quick to get the ball out. It seemed like, where are you throwing the ball into no one? Well, he was just throwing it away to avoid the interception and avoid the big negative play and allow them to keep that drive alive or allow the defense to do what it needed to do. And it worked. Will that work in every game throughout the season, his career? I don't know. But in this game, it worked. So you live with that and move on. And in terms of his performance, I said it up front. I thought he was really good, but not great. And he, as I said, he missed a couple of receivers deep down the middle where he underthrew them just a little bit, and they hadn't exactly blown by the defense, so it was possible that even if he puts that in front of them, the pass is broken up. But he did underthrow those, and he had some throws on the sideline, even beyond the ones that I referenced, where he was throwing it away, where it seemed like you weren't really sure what he was doing there, and maybe he had an opportunity to be able to move around a little bit and get a better play. But all in all, he did what was necessary to get it done and get the win. And I don't feel like the Packers left a whole lot on the table. I don't think they left more on the table than what the Commanders left on the table. I think both teams had an equal amount of self-inflicted wounds, which doesn't take away from how frustrating those things are. But it was the
Mm-hmm.
case. And my last point I will make, which is separate from that, the right side of the Commanders' offensive line was absolutely horrible. Their rookie right tackle was
Yeah.
absolutely horrible. He's awful. I mean, he looks like a terrible draft pick. He was horrible. I mean, I don't even see how he can be starting after this season. Obviously, we'll evaluate that in the whole, and we're just talking about this game. But I mean, bad. But go ahead, Nelson. What's your last point on this?
Yeah, so I'll kind of combat to anybody who's Commanders fans that are actually watching. I think maybe to help out Connerly, I think the best thing going forward for him, because obviously a rookie is going up against already in the first week, he's going up against Brian Burns, top 8 pass rusher in the league. Your second week, you're going up against Micah Parsons, and then week 3, it's not Max Crosby. I mean, Chris, that's a slaughter for a rookie, right? So I think maybe the best thing for them to do is to bump him in inside and the guard position and maybe get some reps over there so that way they can boost up his confidence a little bit before they stick him out on that island. But my last question to you is, Chris, and I think we definitely have seen enough of Love. We saw already 2 games of Micah Parsons in that Green Bay defense. There's a really crazy stretch that the Packers are about to go. And beyond that, we don't know what the Packers can be. But in the weeks 3 through 8, they're only going to get one home game. on their schedule. And then for the rest of the season, we know that at this point, it looks like they're destined to get to the playoffs. Who is the X factor from here on out, based upon what we know through the first 2 weeks? Is it going to be Micah Parsons or is it going to be Jordan Love?
You're killing me with that question. I'm really just focused on this one game. I'm a focus on one game at a time guy.
No,
The
but
value
I
of the
mean, we're
season is a whole
focusing
one
on the
done.
Green Bay Packers.
I
But we're
get it.
focused
I
on the
get
Green Bay
it. And this
Packers.
feels like more something I would have talked about prior to the season. And realistically, after 2 games, I don't feel any differently than I did going into the season. After 17 games and 18 weeks, I may. But as of right now, I think that the best player on that roster is Xavier McKinney at safety, just to put it out
Oh,
there. Last year,
that's
he was
an
the best
okay.
safety in the league. So as of right now, I think it's fair to call him the best safety in the league. There's a lot of guys who missed games with injury in recent years, including last year, who could enter in that conversation. I think there's a lot of great safeties in the league right now. Potentially, we'll see what they can do this season, and hopefully they all stay healthy. But last year, he was the best safety in the league, and as of right now, I'd say he's the best safety in the league. The second best player, especially with what he can be if he's healthy throughout the season and is playing full snaps, Micah Parsons, undoubtedly. And I think Rashawn Gary and Josh Jacobs are 3 and 4, whichever order you want to put them in. So 3 of their 4 best players, for my money, are on the defensive side of the ball. So I would say Micah
Okay.
Parsons for sure to answer that question
Okay.
would be my answer between those two is definitely the more valuable element for them. But I mean,
Okay.
look, Matt LaFleur is clearly a tremendous coach, and Jeff Athlete's doing a great job as defensive coordinator.
Oh,
And,
unbelievable.
and they have a well-built, well-rounded roster. But all in all, now you're missing Jaden Reed and Christian Watson for we don't know how many games we'll see with both of them out or if Christian Watson will play this season. I mean, that quickly becomes a concern. You're going to have 2 rookies playing prominent roles at wide receiver for them, which is what we saw in the game last night. So that's worth noting. But did you have anything else, Nelson?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. You brought a lot of good content with that. That's a curveball that I don't think a lot of people would have guessed. Seriously. But no, I did say to agree with you. I did say a lot of good things in the NFC East preview about the Green Bay Packers defense, how vilely underrated they are at almost every position that they have. And you hit a cornerstone of their defense. So I completely agree with you, Chris. Completely agree.
Yeah, NFC North for the Packers, NFC East for the
NFC
Eagles.
North, I'm
Just
sorry.
it's all good, just
Yeah.
to put it out there, and obviously, our viewers know that we know how big of sports fans you guys are. But hey, thanks for tuning in. For Nelson Jordan, I'm Chris Nelson. This has been the first and final word.